It is another astonishing story about horrific misogyny in the fire service. Last week, the head of the Dorset and Wilts service told Paul that he was shocked at our original allegations and no, there definitely was not a problem in his force.
Do you accept that your service does seem to have a problem with women?
I don't accept that we have a problem.
But tonight, Paul reveals that one of his most senior officers, the third in command no less, was allowed to retire early, only last year, on a full pension after being found guilty of sexual harassment. The Home Secretary, by contrast, in an exclusive interview tonight about these allegations in the fire service and the police, acknowledges that, yes indeed, there is a problem. Also on News at 10. Another miraculous rescue story in Turkey tonight, but there are now 20,000 dead and many of the homeless are struggling desperately to survive. A rapturous reception for Zelensky again, this time in Europe, and fighter jets appear to inch closer.
I will not share the Ukrainian plan with you because this is not my job.
Finally, a change in the law to force landlords to fix their properties in honour of the young boy killed by mould. Swift action after last night's shocking pictures of an apparent hunt and...
OK, Google, what is a chatbot?
The $100 billion question. Google discovers it is very costly when AI turns out to be not quite as clever as we thought.
This is DanTV News at 10 with Tom Bradby.
Good evening. Ever since we first ran a story about misogyny in the South Wales Fire Service, Paul and his team have been inundated by similar accusations from forces all across the country. 9 days ago, as many of you will recall, we ran another story about similar behaviour in the Dorset and Wiltshire service itself. Chief Fire Officer Ben Ansell told Paul he absolutely did not have a problem with women in his force, though he cannot, he said, talk about individual cases. But we can now reveal that his own assistant chief officer, his number 3, was found guilty of gross misconduct only last year following allegations of sexual harassment, being a sexual predator and grooming. The internal investigation said he had breached his position of trust. You don't say. Shortly afterwards, he was allowed to retire with his full pension and without any kind of punishment.
I've had a number of senior members of staff send me explicit pictures, and it repulses you.
Wish it was us, although probably safer for you that it's not. I would have groped you.
Anytime I asked for help or guidance, I would be told that it would cost me sexual favours.
There's photos of accidents. Sometimes you can even see the dead body in the accident.
The behaviour at Dorset and Wiltshire Fire Service is already the subject of a police and an independent investigation. Tonight, ours hasn't finished either. When we first broadcast the allegations last week, they appeared to stun even the chief fire officer.
I'm saddened, I'm shocked and I'm appalled, and I'm grateful for you bringing them to our attention.
Do you accept that your service does seem to have a problem with women?
I don't accept that we have a problem. I think that we have had some challenging times. We have addressed issues.
But now we can reveal that he knew there was a problem, at least in relation to this man. Byron Standen is a former Assistant Chief Fire Officer, third in command at the service. And this is what he was accused of doing to his female juniors, according to our whistleblower, who helped make a complaint.
Sexual harassment, being a sexual predator, grooming and coercion.
An independent investigation found Byron Standen guilty of gross misconduct on at least some, though not necessarily all, of those charges. But last June he was able to retire with full pension and no sanction. Dorset and Wiltshire Fire Service has always refused to discuss his case, including last week.
Was he dismissed over sexual harassment?
So I cannot comment about any particular cases or any particular individuals for reasons of confidentiality.
If he was retiring early because of sexual harassment, you were aware that there is a problem with sexual harassment within the service?
I cannot comment on individuals or individual cases, even to speculate. I simply cannot do that.
What did you think when you saw the Chief Fire Officer interviewed on ITV News?
I was surprised that he didn't accept that there was a problem, because the organisation has known for at least a couple of years there's been problems. There is a culture of fear of speaking out, verging on bullying. They've allowed an environment to fester, for want of a better word. I don't fully accept the bad apple analogy. There needs to be questions about why these apples are going bad.
Questions some think the Chief is no longer fit to answer. Nazir Afzal recently conducted an inquiry into misconduct at London Fire Brigade.
The fact that he would not acknowledge, or did not acknowledge when you put it to him last week, that there was a toxic, misogynistic culture within the service troubles me and worries me. It will undoubtedly worry the workforce of Dorset and Wiltshire, and also the citizens of Dorset and Wiltshire. I can't understand how he feels, unless he's got a very good explanation, that he's still fit to carry out the job of Chief Fire Officer.
The primary job of this service is to put out fires. Tonight, it is battling several that have been lit internally. Paul Brand, News at 10.
Well, when we asked the Home Secretary, Suella Braverman, today about what we had uncovered at the Dorset and Wiltshire Fire Service, she told us a culture change is absolutely necessary. And after Julie's report last night about the crisis of confidence in the Metropolitan Police, and indeed other forces too, Mrs Braverman made a similar point. Standards had to be raised, she said. On the other big issue in her in-tray, migrant crossings, she said the boats would be stopped without, again, saying how.
In Brighton today, the Home Secretary was looking at schemes to tackle antisocial behaviour and talk up her plans to recruit 20,000 new police. But in a week where a serving police officer, David Carrick, was jailed for horrific sex crimes, there's pressure to improve vetting of new and existing officers.
So the College of Policing, which sets the guidance for vetting and recruitment, is updating their statutory guidance to raise the minimum levels which are applicable to vetting. We're also going to look in depth into the Carrick case to see exactly procedurally what went wrong.
But at the moment we're recruiting officers with failed procedures in place.
Yeah, I'm not going to say that we have fixed the problem yet. Change will come, but in the meantime, we need to raise the standards in the processes that are applied.
We've also seen serious problems of racism and misogyny within the fire service, and ITV News has exposed a pretty horrific culture within Dorset and Wiltshire Fire Service. Would you like to see similar changes to vetting procedures in the fire service as well?
We need to ensure that there is a more professional environment, higher standards, a more courteous and respectful environment, and culture change is absolutely necessary to achieve that goal.
The Home Secretary is responsible for one of the government's top priorities this year, a pledge to stop the boats. But what exactly does that mean?
Well, stopping the boats means fixing our problem relating to illegal migration. Last year we saw over 40,000 people arrive via small boats on the Channel to the United Kingdom.
You can't promise to me that you will stop small boats crossing the Channel by the end of this year.
Ultimately, you can judge me on results. Words don't matter. You will come here in a year or so and say, and you will be very clear whether we've succeeded
How will it be
or
clear?
not. Well, we will see a dramatic reduction in the numbers arriving illegally.
In a year, we'll see a dramatic reduction.
I'm not going to put a timescale on it, but what I am going to say, it's going to take as long as it will take.
So it might take more than a year.
It's absolutely essential that we do whatever it takes to stop the boats. To that, I am 100% committed.
Committed she may be, but in overseeing policing, immigration and security, she knows she's under pressure to deliver. Harry Horton, News at 10.
All right, well, as you can see, Paul is here once again to discuss pretty horrific allegations of misogyny within a fire service. What has the service had to say in response to you today?
Well, a lot more than they said last week when we repeatedly asked them about this specific case of Byron Standen. They have reiterated again tonight in a statement that the chief fire officer simply can't comment on individual cases for legal reasons. They say they do take sexual misconduct incredibly seriously and that they were frustrated and disappointed, in their words, too, when Byron Standen was able to retire without any sanction whatsoever because of a loophole in the process. That worked out pretty well for him, and also I think the service has kept it very quiet ever since. Tonight, the victims of Byron Standen say they feel incredibly relieved and vindicated, though angry that they haven't received an apology of any sorts today from the fire service. We know this is wider, though, than just Dorset and Wiltshire Fire and Rescue Service. It's a national problem. Parallels both male-dominated industries which just haven't updated their cultures in the same way that other sectors of society have. I think the fire service, though, lags even further behind the police on that front. 8% of firefighters are women, 33% of police officers are women. So you can imagine the difficulty of being a woman in that workplace and trying to raise a complaint when the vast, vast majority of other colleagues around you are men. There are growing calls tonight for a national inquiry into the culture of the fire and rescue service. And certainly from the emails that we're receiving, there are very few pockets of the country that aren't affected by this scandal.
This isn't clearly not going to be the last such story, but Paul, for now, thank you very much indeed. Now, when we first reported the earthquakes in Turkey and Syria on Monday, the number of dead that night was put at around 3,000. Tonight, the figure has risen above 20,000, and it is very sadly still going up. One of the areas changed out of all recognition is the Turkish city of Kahramanmaraş. This is how it looked, as you can see, before Monday's earthquakes, a bustling place with, to the right, its own 15,000-seater sports stadium. And this is how it looks now, reduced simply to rubble. That same stadium is packed with tents, as you can probably see, the only shelter available to those who somehow survived.
They arrive in their thousands in search of shelter and sustenance. Those who escaped with their lives but lost their homes. They lost pretty much everything else too, and are now surviving on handouts. This woman tells me she can't go inside buildings and her home is broken. Her life is changed forever, and hers is a story echoed around this place. It is a chaotic, vulnerable existence. 2-year-old Amira had become separated from her parents and was calmed by soldiers until they were found. Her family had lost all they had in Syria and are once again starting over. What a way for her young life to begin. This is one of the few places that aid is getting through. There are 400 tents for 1,000 people. 15 people share Esma's tent. With friends missing, she says she worries about what the future will be and is now getting used to bad news every day. On Sunday night, these people went to bed in their own homes. Now they're living in tents and queuing for food, and they have no idea when they'll live in a house again. And this is what remains of their homes and their city. Kahramanmaraş was the epicenter of the quake. 500 are confirmed dead, but that figure goes up with every hour as families are cast into a world of loss. When you look at the scale of the damage here, which is replicated in so many other places, the death toll of more than 20,000 is tragically unsurprising. Some of the living are being found. A chance of life they must surely have thought they'd lost. For many, there is no point in staying. This family fled from Syria and are on the move once more. Leaving a city that had offered them a home was incredibly difficult, Mohammed told me. The only solace was this was the consequence of an act of nature, not an act of war. They joined thousands in exodus, all seeking somewhere to rebuild their lives and recover their sense of safety. Emma Murphy, News at 10, Kahramanmaraş, southern Turkey.
The cruelty of nature in toppling so many buildings on Monday has been compounded ever since by the perilous cold it has inflicted on those who survived. Sleeping in tents in -11 can, in its own way, of course, prove fatal too.
It is deceptively beautiful on the outskirts of Malatya, but inside the city, life is anything but. Watching children play in the afternoon sun, you forget just for a moment the horror of what they've survived. Until you catch sight of a few open-sided tents and realise this is all they've got to protect them from temperatures that drop to -11 at night. We have to live in this tent, Jamal tells me. We don't have anywhere else to go. 5 families with no choice but to live here. The twin earthquakes left the home they camp in front of uninhabitable. Outside, the washing's still up. The earthquake just... Inside, walls have come down and we can only film from the door. They've already had to rebuild their lives once after being bombed out of Homs in Syria. We ran away from Assad only to be hit by an earthquake, she says. Now we're dying. It is hardly living. This is the inside of one tent. At night, the water freezes, and so do the children that call this place home. God help us. I cry every day when the tent freezes, and when the wind blows through, we say, God, please save us. Hardy really wants to tell us he's 7, but no 7-year-old should have to endure what he describes. We don't have any shoes. We don't have anything, he says. And when our house was shaking, we were so scared. They are not beneath the ruins, but can you be described as lucky if in one short lifetime you've survived bombs and everything Mother Nature can throw at you? When you measure your good fortune in boots that fit rather than swamp your feet or leave you exposed completely. Let it be recorded that somehow they are still smiling. They have each other, and for today at least, that's enough. Rachel Younger, News at 10, Malatya.
Well, in Malatya, where Rachel and her team were filming today, there was one successful rescue, seemingly against impossible odds. A 7-year-old boy was pulled from the destroyed block of flats where he lived with his family after 87 hours in the icy cold of that mountaintop city. He was able to talk to his rescuers. Watching it all was his father, who had been out of town at the time. Miriam was taken to hospital, and we understand he is doing okay. And if you'd like to send money to help those who've lost everything in the earthquakes in Turkey and Syria, the Disaster Emergency Committee and its 15-member charities have launched an appeal today, clearly desperately needed. Now, the latest stop on President Zelensky's European charm offensive to win more support against Russia's military offensive was EU HQ in Brussels. After his rallying cry in our parliament yesterday for fighter jets, he took the same appeal to Europe's today. Its president told him member states needed to consider quickly providing the long-range missiles and the planes that Ukraine needs.
Welcome to Europe, Mr. Zelensky. Or as the President of the European Council put it this morning, welcome home. Europe's leaders gave Ukraine's president pride of place this morning, and its parliamentarians offered ovations as he told them.
Ukrainian European way of life намагаються знищити тотальною війною.
There can be no free Europe without a free Ukraine. There were handshakes, hugs and kisses in the council room, but Ukraine's sweatshirted war leader came here with a straightforward request: give me some fighter jets. And he's unlikely to have received a straightforward answer.
Should we be sending fighter jets to Ukraine?
This question is the one being part of the first discussion I mentioned, and I will not share the Ukrainian plan with you because this is not my job.
The French president wouldn't be drawn. There is a persistent worry in Brussels that giving Ukraine the use of Western jets carries too high a risk of escalation. In the UK, meanwhile, the day after Mr Zelensky's dazzling performance at Westminster, the Prime Minister appeared to be getting ever closer to confirming that some kind of air support would be sent.
Of course, we're talking about further support, potentially with aircraft as well. The important first step of that journey is to make sure that we provide the training for Ukrainian pilots to be able to use that very sophisticated equipment.
That training will take months, and it remains unclear what fighter jets the UK could send. It has some of these Typhoons available, but like the American F-16, they require long, smooth runways and big maintenance teams on the ground, which in Ukraine would be prime targets for Russian long-range missile strikes. Heightening the Ukrainian sense of urgency is their expectation of a renewed Russian offensive later this year. A former Russian president visited a tank factory today. While our enemy begs for weapons, said Dmitry Medvedev, we are building them. Volodymyr Zelensky felt the warm embrace of the free world again today, but the questions for his European friends remain. How deep is their commitment to Ukrainian freedom? And what are they prepared to risk to defend it? Geraint Vincent, News at 10.
If you've been following the many shocking stories of the dangers of damp and mould and worse in social housing over the past 2 years, you will not have forgotten 2-year-old Awab Ishak. He was the little boy from Rochdale who a coroner said had died from exposure to mould in a housing association flat. Now, in his memory, a change to the social housing bill going through Parliament is to be made, forcing councils and housing associations to fix problems within a time limit. We were there when the Housing Secretary, Michael Gove, told his parents.
A shadow hangs over this Rochdale estate, and with it the question, how could a little boy die here because of mould and damp? No answer can ever satisfy or soften the unthinkable grief of Awab Ishak's parents. Their pleas for help so long ignored, today their calls for change were finally heard, with a change in the law in their son's name. This was the moment the Housing Secretary told Faisal and Aisha the government will adopt Awab's law.
Good news is we will be pressing ahead with changes to the law in order to make sure that landlords behave properly, and your campaigning has made a real difference.
This was Awab Ishak on his 2nd birthday. He died 8 days later in December 2020. His death was wholly avoidable. The mould that spread across his home, attacking his little lungs, was totally treatable. Awab's parents had fled Sudan for safety in Britain, but were left in conditions unfit for human habitation by Rochdale Borough-wide housing. Today, they spoke for the first time. English is not their first language, so they felt most comfortable reading out their answers.
My wife and I are still struggling to deal with this loss of our son. We hope that our law will help stop any other family going through to the pain we have gone through. We would not wish this pain on anybody. Thank you for.
Awab's law is striking in its simplicity. It will require both councils and housing associations to investigate and then make any housing repairs within a strict legal time limit, probably between 7 and 14 days, or face legal action. You may ask why such basic rights aren't already in law. Then again, why has it taken the death of a little boy for anything to be done?
Do you feel ashamed that it's taken your government 13 years to bring in these basic protections, that we live in a country where landlords have to be told to make repairs in law?
I feel angry that there are far too many families who are living in conditions that are simply not appropriate for human beings, and so action needs to be taken.
Awab's law will take effect in England later this year. His family feel his loss so profoundly, but they hope his legacy will be felt by so many others. Daniel Hewitt, News at 10, Rochdale.
The future of a hunt in Wiltshire looks very much in doubt tonight after the video we showed last night. Fox hunting's governing body is expelling the Avon Vale hunt for breaching its rules. Members of the hunt were caught on camera digging foxes out of the ground for the hounds to chase.
Summoned to explain themselves, the fox hunters left stripped of their membership of hunting and thrown out of the sport.
You like catching foxes for fun? Huh? Why are you catching foxes? Why are you digging out sets?
The footage, revealed by ITV News, sealed their fate.
Hold up, no!
The deliberate digging out of a set. The release of 2 foxes in front of a waiting and bloodthirsty pack of hounds.
Juno!
Wiltshire Police today called on the public to help them identify those in the video, which they said appeared to show offences taking place. The British Hound Sports Association is expelling the Avonvale hunt for serious breaches of their rules. In all likelihood, the hunt will, in 14 days' time, cease to function. These images have caused outrage. The Countryside Alliance said they were disgraceful and wholly unacceptable. Campaigners and politicians have also spoken out.
This kind of digging out and torturing of wild animals is routine behaviour for these people. We need to stop this. There is no place for organised law-breaking and torturing of animals in 2023.
We're very concerned that there is a loophole in the 2004 Act that allows for trail hunting that essentially then becomes an old-school fox hunting expedition with hounds behind a fox, and we don't support that. The British public don't support that, and I think critically most people who live in the countryside don't support that.
The government told us anyone who believes a hunting offence has taken place should report it to the police. After more than a century of hunting, most of it spent legally killing animals, the Avonvale is now facing its own demise for, of all things, hunting foxes. Rupert Evelyn, News at 10.
Well, now to an extreme example of how the wrong answer to a question can, in certain circumstances, prove very costly. When a new bit of artificial intelligence kit at a Google presentation gave the wrong answer to a question, $100 billion was wiped off the value of Google shares. Ouch! Which only goes to show artificial intelligence can be pretty human after all.
Demonstrating its new artificial intelligence, Google threw it a question. What new discoveries were made by the James Webb Telescope? But the answer, that it took the first pictures of a planet outside our solar system, was wrong, and financial markets reacted.
In business, mistakes cost money. But what on earth has happened here?
Their chatbot made an error, and because this is the big hope for the company, the industry actually, really, investors fled. After the statement in the aftermarket in the US yesterday, it lost about $100 billion of value.
OK, Google, what is a chatbot?
A chatbot or chatterbot is a software application used to conduct an online chat conversation via text.
This is a form of Google artificial intelligence that's already in millions of homes, but the company is under pressure in the battle of the chatbots.
Today we can use AI to write poetry.
Google's rival Microsoft is working with this new bot called ChatGPT, and it's making waves because for investors, innovation creates value.
The world is awake to knowing what these systems are and how they work and being able to use them on an everyday basis for whatever the problem they have. This is like the number one prize that's out there on the internet today.
We're using artificial intelligence, known as AI, to develop applications to help.
At this UK lab, they're confident that Google's costly wrong answer will not shake public faith in chatbots for long.
Is that it?
That's it.
As these chatbots become more human, isn't the most human thing to make mistakes?
Just as easy for an AI bot as it is for you or I to get the wrong bit of information off the internet. And that's one of the things that Google and others are working hard on, I think.
Google's mission statement is to make information universally available. But a question about the universe caused this trouble. Chris Choi, News at 10.
Finally, what do the following songs have in common? 24 Hours from Tulsa, Walk On By, What's New Pussycat, and Raindrops Keep Falling on My Head. Yes, all are big hits in the 50s and 60s, so catchy it's tempting to sing them, but I'll spare you. But they and dozens more, as you probably know, were written by the legendary composer Burt Bacharach, who has very sadly died at the age of 94.
Raindrops keep falling on my head.
many of the best in the business, from Nat King Cole through Dionne Warwick, Tom Jones, Cilla Black, The Carpenters to Elvis Costello and more. Recently, Dr. Dre even sang his songs, a whole range of different voices, but the same silky sound running through them, the Burt Bacharach hallmark. That's it. Good night, and thanks for watching.